Hello and welcome to the Perl Maven show again. My name is Gabo and it is Neil Bors from and I'm going to chat with him about his work in with Perl, his blogging software and whatever. Hi Neil. How are
Hi,
you?
Gabor.
How are
Very
you?
good, thank you.
So I've started to see you blogging recently, maybe a year or two ago, on blogs.perl.org. But I understand that you have some little more background about Perl. Could you tell me about what's the story there? Have you
Yeah,
been using Perl earlier?
yeah. So I first started using Perl in the early 90s, I guess. When I was doing my PhD, I was doing a lot of munging of data, and I was using an awful lot of awk and sed and writing huge scripts. And a friend of mine in the department was doing the same stuff, kind of stuff as well. And he came in one day and said, I've discovered this language called Perl. I reckon this might be kind of, a lot better for us than all these mad scripts we're writing. Um, so I had a look at it and thought, wow, this seems kind of like, much more powerful. Um, then when I finished my PhD, I moved to America, and there I was working on a large system written in C that had to work on lots of different machines, and they had a whole collection of shell scripts that would compile this system on all these different uses. And I rewrote all of that in Perl and really enjoyed it. And then suddenly Perl became my hammer, where when the only tool you've got is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Suddenly everything, wow, Perl, I could use it for
You could
that.
do that, yeah.
Yeah. So then Perl became more. The shift from C to Perl kind of went like this until I was just doing more and more in Perl. And then I changed jobs to where I could do everything in Perl. Um, and so that was in the late 90s, I guess. And that's when I started contributing some modules to CPAN and um, just helping with compiles on Perl 5 porters. But then, then I got into management. So I started managing the programmers, um, whom was Andy Wardley, who wrote Template Toolkit. And I started managing teams of people who are managing teams of programmers. And so I wasn't really doing much programming during my day job. I still did a lot of Perl kind of for relaxation and fun, because it's always been just really fun for me to write in Perl. And if I saw people having problems, I would, I could write you a script to do that. I'd kind of look for things that I could do in Perl to relax from kind of the management toil. But then in 2010, I was made redundant and started a business with a fellow redundee. I don't know if that's a word, redundee. And I'm the development department and the operations department, etc. And suddenly here I am programming all day in Perl and JavaScript again, and really enjoying it. And that's kind of when I started posting on blogs, Perl.org, and uploading some more modules, and then I kind of got into this habit of writing reviews, etc.
Yeah, so you have these reviews, which I think they're on your own site, right? On
Yeah,
Neil's
neilb.org. Yeah.
neilb.org, yeah, which will be under the video. Um, and recently you started to post. You turned it into a real blog, the website, which looks really nice. Can you tell me
Thank
about
you.
what software you're using there?
Yeah. So I've been posting a lot on blogs Perl.org, and I found various things about its tool chain, if you like, a bit kind of limiting. And when I write these reviews, I can just kind of format them out however I like, and I'm gradually evolving the CSS for those. And then I thought, oh, well, I don't really want to install WordPress on my site. This is just some hosting site I've got. I just want to be able to write some stuff in, like Markdown or something. So I went and had a look at some Perl tools for static blogging and tried a few, but for whatever reason, I couldn't get my head around them. And I guess, like a lot of things on CPAN, the author scratches their itch, and then once they've scratched it, they kind of move on, and maybe they just keep using it. And so then I had a look at some other static blogging tools and thought, oh, they're a bit complicated. I really just want something really simple. Hey, I'll write it myself, like every good programmer thinks. Every good Perl programmer, anyway. So kind of just like one night knocked up the basics of a blogging engine, which is, and every now and then I think, oh, I want to be able to do this. So then I hack it up a bit more, and one of these days I'll get around to releasing it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask if it's open source, if it's released. It's a static blog engine, right? So
Yeah, it is, and it's a big mess of code at the moment. So I just need to tidy it up a bit, and then I'll put it on GitHub and CPAN, I guess, as well. So maybe if someone, so Book has kind of said, what's his name? Philip Bruhat.
Yeah.
Said, oh, he's got an idea, he's going to start writing something. So part of me thinks, well, if he gets further along, then maybe I'll just start using his, and I can send him feature requests and save myself the effort.
Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to have one or two of these tools, but they're things that are really effortless to start using. So when you start using it, you don't have to look for a template. It already comes maybe with a template or two or three, and then you have to just select and later you can tweak it or replace it. But
yeah, that was kind of my goal, and I guess that's where we had some email as well, was saying, no, I want this where I can download it and just say, set up my blog, and it gives me a default template and default CSS that looks okay, and that I can then just start writing markdown files, and then that I can preview them locally and then push them to my site. And so that's the kind of the model it's got. Is it's kind of almost Git inspired, I guess, in a way, just in the simple workflow.
Yeah, when Git provides you a place where you can host your website free of charge without advertisements, and you can even connect your domain name there, right? So the users don't really need to know that it's hosted on GitHub, and you keep all the links, the incoming links, if one day you will want to move it to some other place.
Yeah, and so I already had this domain and the hosting set up where I had the reviews. And so I thought, well, I just want to put my blog on there. So.
Okay. So what's the story with these reviews? I haven't seen you doing any of them recently, I think.
Oh, yeah, guilt tripping me. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm saying.
So when I kind of rediscovered Perl development and was kind of started developing this service that we're working on, I wanted a module for generating temporary passwords. So I thought, there must be one of those on CPAN. Did a quick search, found a few, and there was one that seemed like, this looks like the best choice. It's based on a standard. It's got lots of documentation. Started using it, but it had a bug where every now and then it would go into an infinite loop, which isn't so good in a web service. So I went back to CPAN and did a bit more searching and came up with a list of modules and thought, well, so I've got no idea which is the best module to use, and there's no hint here. So I thought, okay, I'll do a quick review and I'll post it so that in case someone else is looking for this. So I wrote that review. I gave some feedback to some of the authors and posted it, and had kind of some really good responses from people saying, oh, this is really good. This helped me. Someone who happened to be looking for the same thing not long after me said, oh, fantastic, you've done the work. So the next time I had a need, I thought, okay, I'll do a review of these modules. And then I kind of gave myself a rule that if I'm looking for a module to use and I find more than 4 or more modules, then I should put it on my backlog and I should do a review for it. I guess I keep getting very busy with my company, but also they take an awful long amount of time because I generally spend quite a lot of time looking for modules. That's a bit harder than you might think. Then I end up reading the code, and if I find any bugs, then I want to fix those and push them back. And I've adopted, for every review I've done, I've adopted at least one module that's where the author's not around, and I find some bugs, and some bugs on the bug tracker. So that's become another one of my rules, that I should fix bugs that I can fix as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just become I enjoy doing it. I learn a lot about Perl because I'm looking at other people's code, and it feels like it's useful. At least some people say it's useful. I get good feedback, so it feels like, well, here's a way I can give back to the Perl community, if you like. This is
Yeah.
some of my way of paying back for CPAN.
It's an excellent way. But so you see a lot of Perl code written by people on CPAN and deploy and how is the code? How do you feel it quality wise or?
It's kind of like when you look at kind of a big enough range of authors, you see an amazing diversity. So I see some people's code where I just think, wow, this is, as soon as I go and look at it, you just know, this is nice code. It's laid out nice. It's really clear to understand. Even if it's doing something quite complicated, they've presented it really nice and easily, and documentation's good. An appropriate number of tests, through to something that looks like it's just been lashed together. And I found that quite a few modules that don't even compile on CPAN, and I think, wow, how's this got on CPAN? So there really is the whole spectrum, and some stuff. Occasionally, I'll find modules where I think, I just can't get my head around this. There are some really very talented programmers releasing modules in Perl.
That you said it nicely. Talented programmers, yeah.
Oh,
When you
no,
can't read it.
so I'm terrible at remembering people's real names. I just think of their pause ID. So Zephyrum.
Yeah.
Every time I see if a module turns up on my list for a review from Zephyrum, I think, right, let's go and have a look at this, because he's such a diligent, thorough programmer. And so for example, modules for making HTTP requests. You go and look at someone's, and it might be really quite simple, and you think, yeah, for 90% of the time, 95% of the time, this is enough for doing an HTTP request. And you go and look at his code, and you think, wow, there's all these other kind of things that you really should worry about if you really want to be, if you want to try and get that 100% coverage and working in all the different cases, and that's one of the big things I really enjoy about looking at people's code, but also just looking at finding the different idioms that people use when they're coding, and seeing someone's code and thinking, yeah, there really is more than one way to do it in Perl, and I'd never thought of doing something that way. And I also discover a lot of new modules. So my kind of my toolbox of modules, if you like, is growing as I'll be reading someone else's module. Oh, wow, what's this they're doing here? Let's go and look at this module. So that's part of the reason the reviews take a long time, is kind of, I just let myself kind of ferret off and wander off into CPAN and look at all sorts of interesting modules.
So obviously this takes a lot of time, and I understand that. I usually when I look for a module, I look for one, maybe two, but then I say, okay, whatever. Maybe there are better ones, but
so this is for me one of the key problems with CPAN, and so the kind of lack of curation, and there's no driver for curation on CPAN, or very little. So the barrier to entry for CPAN is very low. It's very easy for someone to kind of knock up a module, and these days with Diszilla, they'll release it onto CPAN, and there's no entrance requirements for CPAN, and those things are one of the reasons why there are so many modules on CPAN, and so many modules for doing the same thing. It's easier to release a new module, to write your own module. So Perl's whip-up-itude makes it really easy to knock up a module for something, and then it's very easy to release on CPAN. So it's quicker to do that than to actually go and look for all the modules on CPAN for doing what you want to do, and then evaluating, well, which is the right one that does what you want and doesn't crash, or doesn't take stupid amounts of CPU. So a tangent on that one. So in doing these reviews, a general pattern that I've seen is, for anything that's at all complicated, there will usually be about 4 orders of magnitude between the performance of the slowest and the fastest module for doing something. And the first time I saw that, I thought, this must be a complete outlier.
And magnitude, or how?
Orders of magnitude. So
It is 10 times faster, right?
Yeah, 10 times. So the fastest one,
yeah,
the slowest one would be just 10 times, not 100 times, not 1,000 times, but 10,000 times slower.
10,000, you said?
Yeah. And
okay, there's 4 zeros there.
Yeah, so 4 orders of magnitude slower. And it's not everything, but if there's enough modules for doing what you want to do, and it's of any complexity, then there will be about 4 orders of magnitude, at least 3 orders of magnitude difference in performance. And and it's always really interesting to go and look at why is that. And whenever I do these reviews, I always end up with this huge list of, I'd like to go back and do this and fix that bug, and I really want to go back and find, why is this module so slow, or why is this module so fast? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's XS that's making something faster, sometimes it's Moose and someone not understanding properly how to do Moose, perhaps. Sometimes it's just poor algorithmic design. But when you go and look at on CPAN, there's no hint of this. So you might find 5 modules, and one of them's got version 3 point something, but that just might be the third release they've done.
Yeah.
Whereas someone else might be on 0.07, and that actually implies a huge amount of code, and the quality can be much higher. So this kind of coming back to the curation thing, then that is. So after doing a few of these reviews, that's the thing that really struck me as kind of, there's no force for people to kind of help make CPAN a better resource, to make it easier for people to find. The really good modules and the really kind of the big heavyweights like Moose and DBIC, etc., they kind of float to the top, yes, but in the kind of the big bulk in the middle of CPAN, it's really hard. And so writing these reviews is one thing, trying to improve the metadata of modules, and lots of other people have ideas on this, and they're trying to kind of nudge it as well. And I just hope that slowly we'll put more and more of these things into Meta CPAN, so that it can become a better tool for helping people find. So if you've got a problem, you should be able to go to CPAN and say, and very quickly identify, these are the 12 candidate modules, and these have been rated in various ways, or there's a review available, and so that you can fairly quickly pick an appropriate module and have some confidence. Whereas right now, I think your experience could be really good, and it could be very bad and frustrating.
And I think the biggest issue is probably the problem that you have to choose. And in many cases, most of the programmers are not really capable of choosing, because we don't have the background or either the time to do all the work that you did.
Yeah.
Okay, obviously that's a lot of work. But even if I had the time, I don't have probably the capability to understand which one is the better module for a certain task. I mean, at a certain level, I can. I mean, okay, does this do the work that I need right now? That's relatively easy to check. But then definitely I will have needs later on, and one of the added value of using someone else's module and not writing just what I need right now is that they have already solved all kinds of problems that I'll need in the future. And the question, which one and how do I choose? And so the problem is that I get there, I have 10 choices, and I don't know how to choose, and then I either just pick one randomly, or I just freeze, and then I say, okay, I don't know what to do here.
Or you then say,
I write my own.
Exactly. I'll write my own, because that will be quicker. So And one of the things I try to do in doing these reviews is, so I usually try and identify, okay, here's the one or two or three modules that you should use. In this case, use this one, and in that case, use that one. Um, but also look at, well, are there some features in these other modules that would be good, that would make these modules, even better? And then if I can code those changes up, then I'll do that. And I've done that for some modules, or submit them as ideas. And in some cases, it seems really right for, these are all doing the same thing. But there really should just be one module that could be maintained. So a good example for that is parsing user agent strings that identify web browsers and web bots. There's a whole bunch of modules for doing this, and there's more turning up all the time. And the real effort for these is keeping up with all the new strings that come out and keeping your module updated. And so there's a whole bunch of people doing this in parallel at different times, doing essentially the same work over and over again. And so then when you've got to pick which is the module for whether you're trying to identify robots or browsers. So I'm kind of trying to work with Olaf Alders, the guy who started MetaCPAN. We've kind of started trying to work on. So I'm maintaining 3 modules, I think, now that do this, and he's maintaining 1. So we said, well, let's put our heads together, but we're not kind of rushing it, and we both get distracted with other projects, of course. Yeah. But trying to converge it down so it can be, well, here's this one module, and so instead of him and I separately maintaining 4 modules, we could have 1 module, and that potentially these other 4 modules could, at least for some time, then just back onto this one, so that we only have to maintain 1 module. So in any space when people are kind of creating new things, it's good to have divergence because people have different ideas, and it's good to have competition. Not that I think people compete very much on CPAN, that's probably another thing that's lacking. But then you need some force to kind of bring them down. And so that's kind of another kind of part of my mission, if you like, in doing these reviews, is to try and become a force. A simple thing that everyone can do is, when you write a module, even if you decide, sod it, I'm just going to write my own module, go and look at the other modules and put links to them in the See Also section in your document, in your documentation. So that even if someone finds your module, you help them find other modules. And maybe one day MetaCPAN will be able to take all this See Also linkage information and automatically produce clusters of modules.
Well, like you could put into the meta YAML file or meta JSON file this information. The author could put in there as well. Yeah. I mean, there is no slot for that right now, I think, but there could be a slot for that, and then we could see whether it is bubble subs, and there's enough interest to doing this. Though the problem, of course, is that there are tons of modules already out there that are not updated, so they won't have a new release and they won't have this information unless someone goes in and either releases the new version of the module or somehow adds this information like a tagging from the outside. And I think there was some discussion about adding tags, the user tags.
Yes, on MetaCPAN. So you can add keywords into a distribution in the metadata now. And if people started doing that, then that would help. But a key thing is we need to be able to kind of crowdsource those tags in somewhere like MetaCPAN. So there's been a number of discussions on that, and a number of different proposals from Yannick and from Tim Bunce on kind of what form that metadata might take. And then it needs to be really easy for everyone to come along and say, and provide tagging. But then that tagging will need curation as well, so that we don't just get 6 different ways for specifying one concept.
It has an advantage of 6 different ways specifying the same subject, is that there are all these millions of people who are looking for these things, and they also use the same 6 different words. So if you only use one of them, then they won't find it that easily, the specific thing. So
yes,
it definitely means. So what I wanted to say earlier, and that it fits here too, you need both cooperation and competition. So the competition would create the 6 different drivers, and the
Yes.
cooperation would somehow create a common link between them.
Yes.
So
One of the
the
hardest things when you're searching for a module is, um, so let's say you're searching for a module for generating passwords. So you might just type password, but then you probably should search. You have to know that you should search for pass, PASS, but also you have to search for PASSWD because a lot of people use for specifying that. And so you don't, any given search will only turn up one slice of the modules you're looking for. With all this keywords and other metadata behind, MetaCPAN could kind of expand your search term and automatically return related things.
Mhm. Okay, something else. But you mentioned that takes a lot of time, but on the other hand, you also mentioned that I think 3 years ago that you started to work on your own company, or
Yep.
what is this company? What do you do there?
So it's a service for aimed at SMEs, small and mid-sized enterprises. So companies from the say 50 to 500 employees, and it's a web-based service for a company to manage setting objectives for their employees and doing an appraisal like at the end of the year.
Mhm.
So I've worked in a number of companies, like small companies and big companies, and they all have this process for setting people's objectives and linking them all up so that like these are the objectives of the company and these are your objectives, so you can see how they kind of cascade together. But then everyone does it by filling in the spreadsheet or filling in a Word document. So it's kind of like dead data. You can't do anything useful with it. So it's just a simple web-based system for the CEO to enter the objectives of the company and then kind of filter them down through the company and for people to see what they're working on. So it's kind of like a, a, um, a B to B service. And so we're bootstrapping it. So there's two of us working on it. I've got a friend who is kind of the commercial side, and I'm the technical side, if you like.
So but you have been doing it for 3 years now, or more.
About 2.5 years maybe. So and
So I
the
assume
first
that you have clients.
I have a very understanding and supportive partner.
Yeah. Okay.
But I do have clients as well, yes. I mean, it's a bootstrap business, and so we're kind of slowly building the business.
Mhm.
So if anyone has frustrations with their objectives system, feel free to get in touch. Yeah, we're kind of slowly and steadily building the business. So and it feels like kind of it's real work. And the back end's all in Perl, and the front end's in JavaScript, which I guess lots of people are familiar with that combination.
Is it open source, any of the code, or is just your?
Um, I mean, various bits that I use in our system are open source, and so very happy to kind of make as much as I can open source without making, if you like, our system open source.
Mhm.
Um, so as much as anything through my embarrassment of the state of the code rather than anything else. But no, I can't imagine we would ever make our system open source. But as much as possible, kind of the nuts and bolts and the Lego blocks, yes, I'd
Yeah, yeah.
make those open source. And I've started trying to make some bits of the JavaScript open source as well. We're using various other people's modules. And that's when you really can come to appreciate CPAN, is when you go and look for bits of JavaScript, a jQuery plugin to do something. You just basically you spend ages trawling through Google trying to find stuff.
Mhm.
We don't know how good we've got it in Perl.
Interesting. So
That's one perspective, maybe. Yeah.
yeah. So okay, but you're lucky because your boss, which is yourself, lets you do all this curating work and all the research on CPAN. Um,
Yeah, I have to admit, after doing the first couple of reviews, I kind of now only do review work on my own time because it's become kind of like a hobby, and it takes up too much time for me to be able to justify it as being a work thing. But yeah, it's really nice having your own company and working on your own things at your own pace.
Yeah,
It's really good, but there's a trade-off, of course, with all the risks.
yeah. Yeah. So I recently saw that you were active in the Quest Hub thing, which is
Yes.
it's just now that you describe your company has some similarities in at least in my view that you set objectives and then you try to accomplish, even though in the Quest
Yep.
Hub is you set yourself or I don't know, you take, so it's more a community like thing.
Yes, it is. It's kind of like and maybe that's what. So I really enjoy Quest Hub, and I'm spending a lot of time discussing things with Vyacheslav Matyukin.
Yeah,
Completely mangled his name. Berakuk or
yeah,
MM Cleric. So yeah, I really like the idea. I think it's really good for Perl, and I've had a number of ideas for other kind of startups, and several of them map quite nicely onto Quest Hub. So I've kind of shared those ideas and said, could you just add these features, and then I can implement my idea in Quest Hub. Yeah, I think it's a really good way to motivate yourself and each other. So some of these ideas that I've got about improving curation of CPAN, I've been adding as quests
hmm,
to try and encourage other people, and so that people can see, look, here's the value to Perl if you do these things.
value. So you were both, you have been an employee, you have been a pro programmer, a manager of pro programmers, and now you run your own business. In each place, basically, you have to create some kind of a value. So you now in a business, it's more, I don't know, obvious or more well understood that you create some kind of value that other companies or people will value and pay you money because they think that value is good for them. Um, and it's pretty. I think it's quite. I don't know. Relatively simple to understand how you create that value. That you create a product that does something interesting or useful for them. But as a programmer, an employed programmer, I mean, or not even a programmer, anyone employed, you also have this value thing, right? That you could want to get a higher salary or I don't know, better job.
You want to get paid in whatever is the important measure for you. So lots of people who put stuff on CPAN get paid in various ways. Some people get paid with with this stuff, but a lot of people get paid by the pleasure they get of other people using their software and the good feedback, or just seeing their code out there and seeing it being used.
Yeah, I understand that, but actually, I'm looking at
Okay.
the part where you're now employed and how would you what would you suggest to people who are employed and who don't plan to build their own company, okay, but they would like to I don't know have a better job, higher salary, more satisfaction.
So
Um,
satisfaction is the I think the key thing there. So fulfillment, feeling fulfilled in what you're doing. Um, uh, so what's the question you're asking? asking?
I'm trying to basically think about ideas, things that people can do to improve their own value. So as a company, it's obvious that if you improve your value, you can sell your stuff at a higher price to more companies, and it's a business. But if you're an employee somewhere, then it's less obvious. What
So
is that? What is the value that you are creating for yourself? I'm saying not for the
uh,
company. For the company, you're creating some value, and they are selling it, and that's their thing. But for yourself, so you as a programmer,
so so when you first started saying that, I was going to say so helping other people solve their problems. And so if you're in a company and you're say a programmer, if you help people solve other problems, and you get a reputation for being good at solving problems and for being helpful, then that you get that reputation as, so you might get a reputation for being helpful, for being a good programmer, for being quick, um, and that can then translate into other things. So that can help you in the company. And so, for example, in the Perl community, if you do the same thing, if you create code or you help people, you build a reputation for the things that you're being very visible about. So, I perhaps have got, if I've got any reputation, it's perhaps more for writing reviews of Perl modules these days than for writing Perl code itself. So you need to kind of think about, well, what kind of reputation do you want to establish, and what that might mean? Because do you want to try and translate this into a better Perl job? Do you want to translate this into your own Perl company? And so then pick projects to work on that build up your karma and your experience and your skills in the direction you want to go in. So you really should give me more notice on questions like this.
Yeah, it's something new that I started. I started to think about in regard of this whole Pearl Maven TV show. Is that I'm talking to all kind of interesting people here, who obviously made had a lot of years of experience in programming and whatever, and I'm trying to find what they do in order to improve themselves. I don't know. Let's say.
So can I jump in on that one then? So
Yeah.
Having a clear goal. So saying, I want to do this, and that goal doesn't have to be very far away. So I would like to do this. I'd like to create a website for doing blah, and then thinking, okay, well, so how can I get from here to there, and breaking that down to so I've got another idea for a Perl-based website, which I've discussed with a couple of people, and I really want to get going on it. But I've decided I should do this in Dancer or some new modern framework, and use this to learn. There's a bunch of things that I haven't used yet, so DBIX class, Dancer, some of the more modern frameworks. So, okay, well, now I need to learn those. It can be very scary to try and jump from where you are to doing this whole system. So pick some smaller things and work on those, and go and look at other people's systems that are similar to where you want to go, and go and read their code, and go and play with some modules. Breaking things down into smaller size chunks that then seem more achievable, and having a to-do list, for example, on Quest Hub, where you can kind of work towards them. And you might work towards them by helping other people. Helping other people, I've always found, is one of the best ways to make sure you really understand something, is can you explain it to someone else? Which is why Stack Overflow, if you like, is kind of a good resource, which Perl doesn't use enough. I wish more of Perl kind of use Stack Overflow. That's a separate tangent.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Just
Carry on. I interrupted you.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to listen to what you're saying about this all these things. Yeah, I think I ran out of questions, more or less. I don't know if you wanted to talk about some other stuff, or tell the audience about.
No, you should stop me now, otherwise I'll burble on about Perl. So one observation, I was thinking about this chat kind of earlier.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, why do I enjoy programming in Perl so much? And I'd programmed in lots of different languages before discovering Perl. And I was thinking, Perl feels like it's my home. I've got all these different programming languages that I use, but when I'm using Perl, it's like I mentally relax, and that's my home programming language. And I get the feeling from listening to your other interviews and from hearing other people talk that that's kind of a common theme. Other programming languages people learn because they think it's good for their job or good for their CV. It'll help them get a job. An awful lot of why I've done Perl and why I enjoy Perl is about pleasure. And then lots of things come out of that. That's kind of, I think, a powerful force for Perl.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And then the question whether you can, how much do you need to work in a day job that you hate in whatever other language, let's say, and then do your Perl on your spare time because that's what you enjoy,
But
or can you combine them and work on Perl as your day job or as your night job or whatever? I don't know.
I think that depends on the person. Some people, if they've got their passion and their hobby, if they try and make that their job, they might lose the passion, and then suddenly it becomes a drudgery. And so I think some people need that separation, and keeping it as your hobby and passion is the right thing. Other people, it works completely fine having both together, and it makes you stronger and kind of more enthusiastic and more passionate. Um, so I think horses for courses.
Good. What else?
No, I should
No,
stop.
no. Okay.
Okay.
So really, thank you. It was really a good thing. You have
Thank
a
you.
visitor over there.
Oh, hello.
That's good. Extra. That's the new generation of the programmers. Hi,
Yeah, this is Erin. This
Erin.
is
Hi.
Gabor. You say hello? No.
Hello. No. So thank you, Erin, and thank you, Dale, for coming to the Pro Maven show. And thank you for all the listeners or people who are watching this for doing so. And I hope that you enjoyed this conversation and you subscribe to the Pearl Maven, the TV show or the newsletter or whatever, and you spread the news about Pearl and Pearl Maven. Thank you and see you next time.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.